When did it happen? Why did it happen? What about his suspension? How long is it? When they should be enjoying the moment and talking about the game. So first, it is a distraction. And I thought Mark Helfrich did a good job saying, it's done, it's over, let's move on. Disappointed in the kid, but let's move on. Secondly, and Joey could look at this better than anybody, they're going to try to run 100 plays. And they're down Braylon Addison, they're down Devin Allen, and now they're down Carrington, so they're going to have some guys out there with tired legs if they get to their 100 plays.
If there's a team that could handle losing receivers, it's Oregon. And that's crazy to say with the amount of passes they'll throw, the explosiveness that they have. But when you look at their system, it isn't about the great playmaking receivers running great routes at times. It is guys running in wide open spaces with places to catch the football. So you can lose a receiver and replace him with another guy that can run the same play. It doesn't have to be great man-to-man separation routes. They're going to trick you with what they do and where the ball is going, and guys will be in wide open spaces.
That's a great point, Joey. Think about last year. They lost their top 4 receivers from 2013 coming into this season when Braylon Addison tore his ACL. Now they've lost 2 more guys, but they've had a bunch of guys contributing on this offense. They also lost Pharaoh Brown, their tight end. Evan Bayless steps up. They moved Byron Marshall from running back to wide receiver, but their most consistent receiver all season has been Keenan Lowe anyway. He's still going to be on the field with Marshall, and then you have Dwayne Stanford. So I don't think that this is going to have as much an impact as we think.
But he is a playmaker, and we've seen that now in the last 2 games. And 2 huge games in the Pac-12 title game, and of course the semifinals against Florida State. He's a guy that's proven if he catches a pass 20 yards downfield, he can make a safety miss and take it to the house. When you've watched him in film this year, he is very good over the middle of the field. He's very good on the scramble rules. He's built a chemistry with Marcus Mariota. They don't have very many big wide receivers. He's one of their bigger guys at 6'2", and with all of the outside zone running plays with the bubble screens and the wide receiver screens, it is an advantage for that receiving core to have a bigger body outside, getting a hat on a hat in the second level. I think they are going to lose some production, though, and you shouldn't be discounted in the passing game and the running game as well.
Well, when you look at the one guy they can't afford to miss is Keenan Lowe. He didn't even catch a pass against Florida State, but he was their best blocker day in and day out this entire year. But you can't convince me that you can lose a guy like Allen on a kickoff who had unbelievable speed. Now you lose Carrington, who's a big play. You're going to miss that. You can say, well, we'll put another body in there. No, they have speed, they have elusiveness, and when they catch a ball, they're electrifying in an open field.
You guys are talking about receivers blocking. If I was out, that's the last thing I want you to be talking about. Hey, we're missing a blocker out wide. That's
the truth in this offense, though. If you don't block, you don't play.
But a quarterback, though, if you lose a bigger body that is blocking, as a quarterback, Greasy, I never blocked, and Greasy was fine.
Well, what about
I was fine on running backs.
Wait a second. He talked to some people. He wasn't all that fine. He might have been saying that too. But how does it affect the quarterback mindset? You're just going into the game, going into the huddle. You look up to a guy who's one of your favorite targets, and he's not there anymore.
It does affect you. And I think what Joey's point earlier is a good one. You know, if we lost Joey Galloway, we were losing somebody that could run a route, beat man-to-man coverage, get downfield, get across field. In this offense, it's about spacing, horizontal and vertical. And if these guys, if it's Reggie or Charlie Nelson that just gets in a hole in a zone as a true freshman, you get Byron Marshall in the hole, it's a little bit easier to replace a guy not having to have that great route to beat man coverage.
People are going to talk about it, that Marcus Mariota now has to elevate his play even more. And let's be honest, he's done that all season long with all the attrition they've had up front on the offensive line, at tight end, and at wide receiver. But doesn't some of the onus have to fall also on this wide receiving group? And if you're a Dwayne Stanford, you're Keenan Lowe, like you guys mentioned, the true freshman Nelson, if you're Evan Bayless at tight end that was a third stringer at the start of the year, had a breakout game against the Seminoles, these guys now all have to elevate their play as well. It can't all be on Marcus Mariota.
And John, I thought what Coach said really made a difference because they're a perimeter running attack.
Right.
They throw a lot of bubble screens, and it's a lot easier, as Joey said, for freshmen in this offense to run the routes because you just run down there and hook and play action gets them open. But high school receivers don't block.
No.
And it's hard for them to learn, and that may be a key because the secondary has improved so much at
about that
Ohio
blocking
State.
stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Well, you coaches are talking receiver blocking. Oh,
Hey, but see, you weren't blocked. That's why they
You're
know.
right.
But that's why everybody knows you and they don't know the other receiver because you weren't blocked for him. That's why they know you and don't know him. That's all. It's obvious.
Well, you also talked about the distraction side of it. Aside from being distracted during the press conference, are you distracted as well knowing your locker room is thinking about this, not just being asked about it, but being disappointed in a teammate?
You know, they lost their leading receiver in the spring for the entire year. They've lost that. They've had so much adversity, and it's sort of the whole motto is next man up. Next man up. And you look at all the injuries they've had. Yeah, Ohio State's had some. It's a quarterback position. But I've never seen anybody have as many injuries over the course of the year than Oregon. Now, you also look at this. They've had 9 different people starting the offensive line. They've only had 4 games where the same people started, and they overcome it over and over. The receivers, I don't know how they do it, but it's a credit to them. Next man up.
Great
you worry
product in
about the
recruiting.
quarterback. You think quarterbacks, and you worry about third downs when you lose receivers. That's when you need the perfect play. That's when the perfect call has to come in. That's when your quarterback has to make a special play to move the chains. And that's when you start to think, where's my guy? Where's my guy that I feel comfortable on third downs? I play with great third down receivers, and they're different. Ike Hilliard was a different guy. We used to call it third and Ike. No matter what it was on third down, no matter what the defense did, we knew we were going to Ike. And I didn't have to block, Coach, but I could run the safety out of the way. I was good at that.
And that's where you
run
get
the
your looks,
safety
too.
out, and Ike just gets a third down. On third downs where we'll look at Marcus Mariota and say, okay, without his go-to guy in the last couple games, what does he do? Can he make a play then?
That's why he's Marcus Mariota.
It is.
That's why he wears that Superman on his chest. He's done it all year. He's elevated the play of those around him when guys have gone down at injuries. That's why he's the Heisman Trophy winner.
We're going to talk about the quarterbacks a little bit later on, and if everybody knew they were going to Ike Hilliard, what about the defense? Apparently that's
They could do nothing about
defensive
it.
coordinators that get fired along the line. When we come back, we're going to talk about this guy. There's a coach named Urban Meyer who seems to win just about every time everyone expects him to lose. He loves that underdog role. And Marcus Mariota, what is his legacy as a starter? Well, it's just been 3 consecutive years of terrific play. Can he walk off with a championship to go with his Heisman Trophy?
Don't worry, they left for the game. Bram, this is Mark Helfrich. Get me Phil Knight, stat.
Think Urban would miss the spring?
Keep it. Bram, playbook.
You sure?
No one's gonna know.
Yeah. I forgot I have a meeting.
The last time Ohio State was an underdog, it beat the #1 team in the country. Alabama can tell you all about it. The Buckeyes aren't used to being the non-favorite. They take it as an insult, a slap to the face mask. 3 times this season and 5 times altogether under Urban Meyer, the Buckeyes have been underdogs. Final score, Ohio State 5, favorites 0. Memo to Oregon. Be careful, you're favored.
When you coach at Utah and then rebuild Florida, you're going to be expected to lose some games, and you can say that of Urban Meyer and Ohio State. But every time he's expected to win, he seems to come out on the top end of the game, including, as you heard Gene just say, against Alabama in the All-State Sugar Bowl. That one given no chance to win because, of course, he was working on his 3rd quarterback of the game. So why is it that Urban Meyer is so successful when he's not expected to win?
Ohio State doesn't turn on the film and see one team that they can't beat. They don't turn on the film and ever see a team and say that team's better than we are. They go out and they know that if they play their game, they win football games. As a player, you don't necessarily know what the line is. I never knew what the line was when I played. So the underdog talk is something that we all talk about, but it was never discussed in a locker room. We go from what we see on film. And if we look at it on film and say, we're better than that team, then the underdog thing goes right out the window.
I wanted to know the point spread. on Monday. Yeah, absolutely. Because that told me whether we are as bad or as good as I think. Well, you say a 4-point underdog. That's not an underdog. Underdog, 20 points. You run 20 points. Now you convince me. But 4 or 5 points, that's not really an underdog. Here's why I wonder. I'm looking at the mistakes we made last week. I'm looking at the great plays the other team made this week. And I'm looking at the film and I'm scared to death. And I have a tendency to overvaluate the opposition. I look at the point spread. We're a 2-touchdown favorite. Good Lord, dude. Well, let's just go. We don't need anything special. We're a 2-touchdown underdog. I got still 2 touchdowns. Block punt, fake field goal, sub-trick play, something along that. That's why I wanted to know. I could care less whether we covered or not. How good are we? 4 points, that's not an underdog. That's a miscalculation.
I've been around a lot of coaches that are like you, Coach, that want to know the point spread so that they can use it as motivation with their team. And I think when you look at Urban Meyer, it's a fine line that he walks in using that underdog status to get the chip on the shoulder for his guys to go out and to play at a very high level and maintain that focus. But it is a fine line, too, that you don't want your guys to believe that they're underdogs. You want to be able to outline to them very specifically what are the things that they need to do to go out and win that game. If you can do those 2 things, you can use the point spread as an advantage, and Urban Meyer is one of the best.
Whatever Urban Meyer's been telling his team to get them motivated after being classified as an underdog, he's been saying it often this year. They've been doubted all season long. You lose a 2-time Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year in Braxton Moore at the start of the year. People doubted him. Then they lost to Virginia Tech. It was over. No one gave him a shot. Very few people gave him a shot at Michigan State. Yeah. J.T. Barrett goes down with an ankle against Michigan. It's over. You beat an SEC champion in their backyard in New Orleans. Nobody gave him a chance in that. And yet this team somehow relishes that stage and that opportunity to prove all the doubters wrong. How is Urban Meyer ever an underdog? He won 2 national championships at Florida. The guy's lost 3 games since he's been at Ohio State, and yet people continue to doubt. They're going to continue to do that this week and tonight, heading into tomorrow, and yet this team always responds. They answer the bell.
You know, you got to create an edge every week as a coach, and you've got to reach your entire football team. There's a lot of diversity on a football team, and you got to get in the helmets. And some guys respond to some things, and some guys respond to others. I don't think this week Ohio State's going to feel like an underdog. It's a couple of points, and a lot of people think Ohio State's going to win the game. So that's a hard sell, but still there's a few guys out there, and he'll say, Jesse, they don't respect you. You won the conference championship. You beat Alabama, and they still don't think you can beat a Pac-12 team? Come on, Jesse.
Here's what you
What's the deal?
Here's what you sell. They're going to see something they have not seen all season long. When they play a team like Alabama, of course they have great athletes, but they've seen that type of offense during their season in the Big Ten. Now they'll see an offense that is a faster pace offense, more moving parts that you don't see in the Big Ten with the best quarterback, the best playmaker in the country. So you don't need to tell me about point spread. You got to just show me the guy that won the Heisman Trophy, and let's see what he did. And defensively, you'll know we better get up.
But when you are the underdog, you play loose, you're relaxed. The pressure's on the other team. But that's also why they have difficulty closing the deal. How many times do we see the underdog play them real close to the end, then they start making mistakes when they get tight, like, wow, we have a chance to win. But Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas, you're never an underdog.
That's right.
Of the 2 semifinal games, I thought Ohio State's win was more impressive. And I think a big advantage for them was getting a chance to go back home on campus in their own facility, away from the frenzy, and for Urban Meyer, this coaching staff, to turn the page on a very impressive win that nobody called as an underdog, and get them refocused to play this game. That's huge.
Don't say nobody called. Too easy. All right, don't say nobody. But we're going to line up. Easy.
Where did you put on the tape?
Easy.
Did you ever coach at Ohio State? Did you ever play at Ohio State?
Yeah, we could see it.
But here's the thing that you just kind of touched on that I wonder about, Brian, which is he just beat Alabama. He just beat the team that everybody thought was invincible coming into this playoff. I think most people would have picked Alabama over Oregon to win the entire thing. So does he need something to go back now and say, hey, we just beat this great team, so his players don't start patting themselves on the back like our panelists do over here and say, hey, we can get beat?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that Oregon will have their attention. And for the biggest reason why is because Ohio State has not seen this style of offense, this pace of offense this season. If I'm in that room, I'm saying, look, you better bring your focus, your A game from the very first snap, because if you don't, you will get run out of the stadium.
Yeah, but let's remember that they aren't playing Oregon. They're playing for the national championship. We're not playing Oregon. We're playing for the national championship.
The other head coach, though, Mark Helfrich, he was an underdog just to get the job.
Yeah.
I don't think many people thought that he would get elevated when he took over for Chip Kelly. And, of course, Chip Kelly took over for Mike Bellotti, who did a really great job getting it to one level. Chip Kelly took it to another level. You would not expect Mark Helfrich to be able to do that. Chip Kelly got him to the championship game, but did not win it. Helfrich would take him one step further if he comes out in a victory in this one. So, Coach Mac Brown, as you look at Mark Helfrich and the job he's done, has he proven enough? Or does he need to win a championship to say, hey, I'm a little better than the guy I took over for who's in the NFL now?
I think yes and yes. He's proven that you can take over an older staff and handle it and manage it and win and get to this ball game. We won the game in 06 when you were there. We lost the game in 09. Losing doesn't help. I'm telling you. If he loses the game tomorrow night, it goes back to still Oregon's never won a national championship. If he wins the game tomorrow night, it puts him in a position where very few have ever gone, and no one at Oregon has ever gone, and it separates him from Chip Kelly.
Do you guys agree? Do you agree, Jesse?
I still need to see Mark Helfrich have more success before I'm willing to put him in the same category as Chip Kelly. It's been remarkable what he's done in year two. Very few coaches in the BCS era. I think it's Jim Tressel, Bob Stoops, Urban Meyer, Gene Chizik. Those are the guys that won in year two. So it's phenomenal he's even here, but it helps when you inherit Marcus Mariota, let's be honest. You inherit one of the best players in all of college football to run the show, and that's great. I do give him a lot of credit, Coach. I agree with what you said about managing the staff. He lost his defensive coordinator, Nick Aliotti, that had been there 25 years, decided to promote Don Pelham, who had been there 23 years, to keep a level of consistency. That paid off really well, especially late in the year. There's a lot of things on and off the field he's done a very, very good job of.
See, I don't necessarily agree that I have to see him without Marcus Mariota, because he did it with Darren Thomas. He was the offensive coordinator, quarterback
Chip
coach.
Kelly was calling plays, though.
Exactly, but developing Darren Thomas and being able to develop that quarterback and then to go to the championship game in the first year that Darren Thomas was starting, that had a lot to do with Mark Helfrich. Certainly, we all know about Marcus Mariota, but I think he's proven a lot more than people think, even without Marcus.
And more so than just the wins, but when you look, and we talked about last segment, when you start to lose guys, and it's the same conversation for Ohio State losing the quarterbacks, you start to lose playmakers, and you still find ways to win, speaks to your coaching. It lets you know, okay, these guys are running a system where they can lose guys, put other guys in that system to have the same success, go out and beat a Florida State team and then beat them handily. You know what I mean? You talk about the Ohio State game, you know, being a tougher win. But think about what Oregon did in that game against Florida State, a team that hadn't lost in 2 years, put them away and had a chance to sit back and rest and start to look ahead and start thinking, okay, we did our work here today. Now we're looking for the next game. Is impressive from a coaching standpoint.
What impresses me the most about Mark Helfrich, he got beaten that badly last year by Arizona, 42-16. Loses this year at Oregon to Arizona again. But he did not lose the team. He lost a game. He did not lose the team. He brought him back. I remember doing a game, Chip Kelly's first game, Boise State, and I'd never seen a worse performance by a football team in Oregon put on that day. And I thought, man, they're going to be lost forever. That's when the running back got upset and started to fight. But I'll tell you what, Kelly brought him back, proved he's a great coach. I am really impressed with what Mark Helfrich has done.
And I don't think you can take what he's done for granted either. I think a lot of people just assume you take the keys to a Ferrari and you just keep driving it off in the sunset. It's easy to mess this thing up. And I mean, Mike Bellotti and Chip Kelly built a foundation. He's kind of continued and carried on. There are a lot of coaches that could have shown up, decided to put their own stamp on it, recruit differently, schematically do things differently, hire differently. And you can mess a good thing up. Mark Helfrich hasn't done that.
You look at the redshirt freshman on this football team, and he obviously recruited. So one thing, he can evaluate talent.
And give Oregon some credit.
Look, I think what Mark Helfrich, I think what started his career, what jettisoned them to this championship this year, was their ability to beat up on a weak coach team last year in their bowl game. I don't think
it was a step forward. You know, they had their national championship plan in place to beat a great, well-coached Texas team in the Alamo Bowl last year, and that's why I think they'll win this week, because they've played the best.
In the big bowl game.
No, very quickly, think about what Oregon has done. They've got a different plan from everybody, from Rich Brooks to Mike Bellotti, from Mike Bellotti to Chip Kelly, from Chip Kelly to Mark Helfrich. They didn't go out and get that sexy young new guy that's out there that's so hot. They stayed within, and then Mark did that last year when Nick Aliotti left. He stayed in-house when a lot of people told him, you got to go outside. And kept a guy that's been around a long time, and it's worked for them.
When you run this system, don't you have to stay in-house, though? When you have this type of system and you've recruited players to play in the system, it would be hard and take some years to change over to a different offensive system from a recruiting standpoint, from a player-wise, to get a different system run. Offensive line would have to adjust. Don't you have to almost stay with the kind of coach that's in this system to step in and make it seamless moving forward?
You make a good point. However, when you're a football coach, you grow up, you have all these favorite people as assistants. You want them to come be loyal to you. You want to work with them. You enjoy it. I took my little brother from the fraternity when I became a head coach. Turned out to be a great move. But you just have an instinct to want your own people. But for him to stay in-house, I think it was a great choice by him, but I am impressed. When you point out mistakes he's made, I'll jump up and be his critic, but not right now.
And I think the first thing that I think about when I think about Mark Helfrich is not all the games and all that. I think about this guy as a person. I mean, this is one of the most selfless coaches, one of the most selfless people in all of college football. He only makes $1.8 million a year. Nick Saban makes 3 times that.
Oh, is that it?
You never hear about him complaining about that.
One last coach in the country.
That's about to change.
He does not allow hollering on the field by an assistant coach or player. That is impressive. I could not have
Coach, you're hollering now.
No, settle down. He doesn't allow that, and his team shows it.
No hollering on my set.
Coach, you're getting all upset.
If Mac's not hollering at me right now, then nobody is allowed. All right, we're going to continue in a moment. Cardell Jones, he is on a winning streak. 2 straight games he's won as a starting quarterback. Wait till you find out what Jesse thinks about next year. Will he be able to maintain that job with 2 All-Americans behind him? And, of course, Oregon, they have this huge victory. Their defense, though, hardly anybody talks about it. How good is this team on the defensive end of the ball?
The National Championship tonight.
They dominated in every way.
This was a resounding statement.
To the races. The dream continues for the Buckeyes. The National Championship presented by AT&T, Oregon, Ohio State, tonight at 8:30 on ESPN.
This was, for all intents and purposes, his backyard growing up. I'm not sure I trust someone who'd left this to run an offense.
He's the best player in college football, and it's not debatable right now.
Why would you ever leave there unless you had a chance to go from paradise to heaven, which is where the Oregon Ducks are looking to go to when they go to AT&T Stadium and take on the Ohio State Buckeyes in the championship game. Marcus Mariota, it's unreal. He almost never loses. He almost never throws an interception. As a result, he's won a Heisman Trophy, now a chance to win a championship game. What will Marcus Mariota's legacy be if he wins this championship game, Brian?
You know, I think when I think about his legacy, I don't just think about on the field, quite honestly. When you're a student athlete, I think about the entire package. The way that Marcus handles himself off the field is as impressive, if not more, than what he's done on the field. And on the field, 134 touchdowns, only 13 interceptions. If he's able to cap this off this season with the Heisman Trophy and then win the championship, he will be right at the top in the history of college football, in my opinion.
Wow, that is saying something.
I think that everybody will know of Marcus Mariota 30 years from now. He won the Heisman. He wins this championship, he will be immortalized in Oregon history. Because remember this, Oregon's won 1 basketball championship. First NCAA tournament, just like the first. And who'd they beat? Ohio State. And probably by not as big a margin. I think it was 41-34. That score may be greater this time. But what he's done is tremendous. I agree with you, though. And he has a great chance to be an outstanding pro because you look at all the great quarterbacks, none of them bring baggage with them. I'm talking about Manning. I'm talking about Romo, all of them. You look at all of them.
When you look at his legacy, he's sort of gotten an assist from Johnny Manziel, from Jameis Winston. You know, when you look at those guys and they became bad guys in the eyesight of the public, and then here comes Marcus Mariota. This guy is just a great kid off the field. He's a great teammate, a great leader, and then a great player. It has elevated him to this place like, gosh, that's what we've been waiting. We've been waiting on this kind of guy the past couple years because we've dealt with the off seasons of the other two bad guys. And it's like, yeah, they're knuckleheads. So it's like, finally, thank you. This is what we've been waiting.
He will be the most famous person to ever come out of Hawaii. Well, our president, I think.
I've been one of the guys at least.
I got to say, guys, if he wins the game, I think you have to look at Marcus Mariota's season, and if it's not the greatest single season in college football history a quarterback's ever had, it's got to be one of them. And it's not because of the numbers. And the numbers are ridiculous. He's thrown 3 picks from 408 attempts this year. Runs for over 6 yards a carry, 56 touchdowns. That's remarkable. But it's what he's had to overcome. We talked earlier in the show about the injuries. You lose your leading receiver coming into the season. You lose your top 4 offensive tackles at some point. You lose an All-American center for 3 games. You lose your All-Conference tight end. He's not going to play in this game with his 2 top wide receivers, and yet he continues to elevate the play of those surround him. That's what great players do, and this is unprecedented. No quarterback has ever had to play 15 games and win a national championship. If Marcus Mariota is able to overcome all that and have the season he had statistically, what else? Who else has ever been better in a single year?
Every great athlete I've ever coached, you cannot put a film on and say, look, yeah, great when you walk off practice every day and say, did you see what he did today? Did you see that? I'm talking about Tim Brown. I'm talking about Rocket Ismail. The great ones show up every day and do something that boggles your mind.
And, you know, I had a week with him last year at the Alamo Bowl, and I spent a lot of time around him. He's every bit as good a young man as we see in here. He's not faking anything.
You didn't get close to him during the game, though.
No, we didn't. No, not at all.
You never should have played them last year.
No, that's the fact right there. They shouldn't have been in the Alamo Bowl. But another story, Colt McCoy. When he and Tim Tebow and Bradford went for the Heisman, 3 of the nicest young people to ever be in New York, which was great for the character and the integrity of the award. But then Colt didn't win the Heisman. That hurt him, set him back. And then he had a chance in this game tomorrow night against Alabama to win a national championship because Vince Young had just won that national championship. And that would have put him at a different level at Texas. And he gets hurt in the 5th play of the game. And his history, his storyline changed because of an injury. And today, if you ask him, he still just dies over coming out of that ball game on the 5th play when he had a chance to win a national championship. Marcus has still got that ahead of him.
Well, that's what is interesting. And the question is it fair then? Because everything we're saying if he wins that game. When everything that becomes before that word if has already happened. Is it fair that we have to follow that up with the victory for all the rest to be valid?
Colt McCoy is still a great quarterback at Texas.
That's what I'm saying.
And he's adored in the state, and he'll be one of the best quarterbacks in college football history, won more games than anybody else. His life would be different if he had won the Heisman or that game.
And I agree with something else that's sort of not fair is when we talk about these Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks and what they've done in their career in college, the next step, what they do at the next level, also plays into the equation. Yes. If they go to the next level and they're successful in the NFL, and Coach mentioned it, the guys that went to the NFL that didn't have baggage, we will then tie that in and judge them and their legacy in college will be tied to what they've done in the NFL.
Not to me. They're two separate to me. Because I think
I'm not saying that everybody, but to the fan, to the general public, they will tie it in to what they've done at the next level when you look at the legacy going backwards.
But do people think Gino Toretta and Danny Werfel were bad college quarterbacks?
Or
no, but a lot of people would say, who?
What
Yeah,
about
you don't
fans
talk about it.
We don't say that.
I wouldn't say who because I played with Toretta.
No,
Toretta, he's one of my 27 quarterbacks.
What about Matt Leinart and Vince Young?
Well, sure. Matt Leinart, Vince Young, Tim Tebow, Danny Werfel, all these guys, and just I think about their
really
supporting
fresh
cast.
though when you talk those guys.
That's right. But listen,
go back a little.
It's why the pressure on Mariota is really big. When you win the Heisman Trophy, it's about putting an exclamation point on the season. When you evaluate quarterbacks, high school, Pop Warner, back in the P in Ontario, the NFL or college, it's about championships and it's about winning games. And he's got the pressure as the Heisman Trophy. He's trying to become only the 9th guy ever to win the trophy and hopefully hoist a national championship. It's not easy. And an opportunity to put an exclamation point on something that's never been done before. This is the inaugural college football playoff national championship game. There is a lot of pressure. Now, he seems like the type of guy, the Hawaii chill thing, he can handle it. You expect him to be able to, but don't underestimate the pressure falling on Marcus Mariota in this game.
You want to know what's not fair? Cardell Jones wins 59-0 against Wisconsin in the championship game of the Big Ten. He then surprises Alabama and beats them. And coming back next year, he's not even guaranteed the starting quarterback job. As a matter of fact, he might be third string again if Braxton Miller were to come back, 2-time MVP of the Big Ten. And then, of course, J.T. Barrett, who was so tremendous. This is incredible.
Embarrassing.
A set of riches that is there for Urban Meyer.
Let's remember, I think it was about the 6th game of the year. Barrett threw 5 touchdown passes for like the 4th game in a row. What did Urban Meyer say? Braxton Miller will be our starting quarterback next spring when he returns. Now, it changed after that. I think the same thing with Cardell Jones. I don't care what Cardell does. They're going to be with J.T. Barrett because I don't believe there's any way in this world Braxton Miller returns to Ohio State. You don't tweet, I think Oregon's going to beat Ohio State, and then get in the huddle and look at those guys, say, protect me up front. Man, no, it ain't going to happen.
I love the fact that Coach Holtz is using tweets as his frame of reference.
The one guy up here.
Spreads and tweets.
And why? Because I read it other than in the paper.
I had a chance to call 2 games for Ohio State, the Minnesota game and the Michigan game this year. And watching J.T. Barrett and comparing him to what Braxton Miller was a year ago, I think this offense went to another level of efficiency. And J.T. Barrett, I think, and it's a shame that we've talked a lot this week about Ohio State. I haven't heard a whole lot of talk about J.T. Barrett and his contributions to this team in this season. They would not be anywhere near this game without J.T. Barrett. I truly believe that. He had a fantastic year. It was a tragedy that he got hurt in that game. And when you talk about the spring next year, it should be a competition. That's what playing football is all about and playing quarterback is all about. It should be Cardale and it should be J.T. Barrett. I do think and I do believe that J.T. Barrett gives them the best chance to have the most explosive offense.
And I agree with both you guys on what you just said. Therefore, it will not shock me next year if Urban Meyer only has one of them back. And I also think Braxton Miller is going to transfer. We don't even know, by the way, if he's healthy with the labrum injury and if he's going to be able to. Do you really want to compete against J.T. Barrett? If you're not 100%, he can't afford to sit and go. It will also not shock me, and I'm not an agent, I'm not giving him advice, if Cardell Jones declares for the NFL draft. If he has great success in the national title game and he wins. He's a redshirt sophomore. He's able to do so. I know he's only played 3 games. He will have been, and it is a huge assumption, if he wins. He will have been unbelievable in the 3 biggest games of the year, and he's got some assets and physicalities at 6'5", 250. You simply can't coach. Is there one team in 32 out there willing to take a shot on that guy? That's a real possibility.
What happens is you have a guy who's a 3rd-team quarterback, and he's very team-oriented. And all of a sudden, a couple injuries, he gets ahead. All of a sudden, he isn't willing to sit anymore. I mean, doggone, I think I'm pretty good now. You proved it. Before, he was content to be 3rd team, no longer.
And the same with Barrett, and the same with Braxton Miller. We don't give Braxton Miller enough credit for helping Ohio State get to this point. Most valuable player 2 years in a row. He won a lot of football games, and he's a really good football player, and he's a good leader. I saw these guys in preseason. And I watched them practice with Danny Cannell and Reese Davis, and they weren't very good. The offensive line was average. They lost 4 guys that were starting in the NFL. The running back, Elliott, had a broken wrist at that time, and he was out. Braxton Miller wasn't practicing. The 2 young quarterbacks couldn't hit anybody. I mean, they really struggled that day in practice. And Tom Herman, who worked for us at Texas as offensive coordinator, he sat there and said, Coach, I don't know. If Braxton Miller don't play now, we could be in a mess. It could be in bad shape. It's one of the great things about coaching They developed those kids and they made them better. And they got them to this point. We got all these coaches out there blaming injuries and I can't do this and I don't have good players and all that. They didn't do any of that. They said no regrets, no excuses. Let's go to work and let's get better. And that's what they are today. Now with Cardell, his legacy would be, I won the conference championship, I won the Sugar Bowl, and I won the national championship. Oh, no, not in 3 years, 3 games.
Yeah. And I might have to go back to Ohio State and sit on the bench for 2 years to a player that has more eligibility than I do, and this is not a strong NFL draft class. Mariota and Winston go early.
I think it'd be a huge mistake.
I think it'd be a huge mistake.
I'm not saying Larry Sugar should, but it wouldn't shock
I agree with you. I don't think all 3 guys will be back, but I think it is way premature, and the talk has begun in Columbus, Ohio. If Cardell Jones wins this game, takes us back to what we were talking about. Why does he have to win this game to go pro? If he is good enough to go pro, whether he wins this game or not, then he has the skill set, he has the ability. I think it's premature to make that decision. If there's a decision to be made, and again, the idea of I deserve to be starting now in college football, and that's why we see so many kids saying, look, I'm out of here. I'm not going to sit on the bench. You could go from having a great situation with 3 winning quarterbacks as talented as anybody in the country down to only having 1 left because of the idea of I deserve to be playing football. We've taken a kid from 3 games to I'm going pro. That's a huge mistake.
Urban Meyer won a championship using more than 1 quarterback, right? He won his first championship.
But I'll tell you what's unfair if he goes pro. Urban Meyer's sitting there, not able to recruit a high school quarterback. He got 3 quarterbacks. All of a sudden, he's down to 1, and he can't get it because all the other high school athletes, quarterbacks, committed to somebody else thinking you had 3.
Hey, Coach, as a player, we're not worried about that. I'll be honest with you.
Well,
if you're Cardell Jones, you're not sitting there thinking,
I'm just letting you think about it, BBB.
If you're Cardell Jones, you're not sitting back worried about, man, poor Urban if I get out of here. You're thinking, look, just like Jesse said, I got a couple years left to make my mark on this game, and then hopefully the next step. You're not sitting back thinking, boy, what would happen here if I leave?
But you think about your teammates and what you owe to them.
Hardest thing to do as a coach is keep 3 good quarterbacks. It's hard to keep 2 unless you've got an older one and a young one. You got them the same age. They both want to start. Mom thinks they both should start. One of them's out of there.
Even if 2 come back, if it's only 2, neither of them are sitting. I mean, he's going to have to find a way to work both of them into the lineup, or some of you be gone like halfway through the season for the next season. Ezekiel Elliott, well, this guy, nobody could lay a hand on him. Are those Wolverines chasing him? We'll take a look at the running game of the Buckeyes in a moment.
Sometimes you feel like a nut.
In the center and from the heart, along the brink and on the margin, lake shores and cold winds, coastlines and deep forests. Ohio's not really the middle of America. In Oregon, not the farthest edge of the country, but they are bound by a single letter and a final game, common ground and a last goal. The letter O connects them, but it's the number 1 that shall divide them.
Well, there's 2 O's and a lot of O in the game, but defense is going to be the question. So the letter D for Oregon must be answered. Yards allowed against Florida State, 481 yards, almost 500 yards. So even though the game was a blowout score-wise, Florida State, if they didn't cough the ball up a million times, would have been very much in that contest. So would you be concerned if you're Oregon?
I would be, except the performance that their defense has had in the last 3 or 4 games. They've gone to running more blitz, putting more pressure. They have created 30 turnovers. They're plus number 1 in the country in turnovers. But I think when you look at Oregon's defense, I'd say, man, don't worry about the scoreboard. We need to have 7 stops. 7 stops, that means 7 times they don't score. I don't care if it's the first 7, the last 7, but their defense has come on recently. Now, I grant you, against Florida State, they never stopped it. Florida State's punter would have even earned a letter if he'd played 12 games like that. However, they did take the ball away. Some of it was Florida State's poor play, but I think defensively, with all the blitzing they've done the last 4 weeks, they've made some positive changes.
Here's what I worry about this defense is when they face a physical Ohio State running game with Ezekiel Elliott and the moving parts, and then you add in Cardell Jones at 250 pounds running the ball, in the Alabama game when Cardale Jones got his first down running the football, took a huge hit, spun around and kept going. And that's the first time in that game where people saw a guy run through the Alabama hits. He took the hit, stayed on his feet, and kept going, and it almost changed the confidence of the offense. It changed the entire game at that point. So if you're Oregon and you want 7 stops, you're going to have to get those stops, not only stopping Ezekiel Elliott, but there's going to be a crucial 3rd down. Can you stop Cardale Jones at 250 pounds from getting that crucial 1st down and keeping the offense on the field? Because quite honestly, if they can move the chains and keep Marcus Mariota on the sideline, that's as good as good defense. Possess the ball, run it, and they're going to be very physical, and I'll be interested to see if Oregon can keep up with the physical run game.
That physicality is the biggest question to me, too, because I think one thing, we've all watched the tape and watched this team play. They're very athletic. They play with tremendous team speed on defense. And up front on the defensive line, big, long athletes, guys like Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner and Tony Washington. But at the point of attack, can they hold their gaps? Can they play with great gap integrity? We know Ohio State is a spread offense. They like to play with 5 guys in the box. And it's hard to control a run game when you have those types of numbers. More than anything else, I think it's great run defense. And it's linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks needing to be physical. I'd say one thing Ohio State does a great job of at wide receiver is getting into the 2nd level. It's stock blocking on linebackers, and it's getting in your face and getting push. It's not going to be enough for Oregon to be good up front stopping the run. They need total team defense, running to the football, making tackles. That's my biggest concern for this defense heading into this match.
I'm not concerned with the physicality from Oregon's defensive line up front. I think Armstead, Balducci, Buckner will be up to the task. They play with great leverage. My question coming into the game against Florida State was losing Ifo Ekpeolomo and replacing him with Chris Cisse and how that would affect this defense. What ended up happening is they played some cover 2. They protect Cisse by rolling him up and having a safety over the top. Now, if you come into this game against Ohio State, my biggest concern, when you bring Devin Smith into the slot, which they did a lot against Michigan State, one of the fastest players on the field, if you don't get a good reroute in the slot on Devin Smith and he gets up on a safety, Reggie Nelson and Eric Dargan, they struggled against Utah. That game, they had players get up on the safety and go a 2-way go. To me, if you don't get that jam at the line of scrimmage on Devin Smith, that's my biggest concern, because they're going to protect Cisse. It's the safeties that are going to be on an island.
Yeah, but you go cover 2, then that's tougher to stop the run game. And if I'm Ohio State, I'm coming. It's going to be tougher to rotate a safety in the box.
And if we're talking spread, with both corners, right? So you have immediate run support with both corners. That's the style they play.
That is outside, and believe me, if my corners are leading the defense in tackling, you are in trouble because you're making tackles at the 2nd level. And we talked about the receivers and their ability to block. A cover 2 corner is easier to block than any corner in defense. So you go cover 2, you're giving up the extra guy, the extra safety in that box, and you depend on corners to tackle. I don't believe there's a corner in the country that is going to tackle Cardale Jones and Ezekiel Elliott consistently in a football game.
I don't believe you'll find a team in the country with a safety. The strong safety is not either the 1st or 2nd leading tackle on the football team because they have to support them. I agree with you on that completely. But
I need some on that, Coach. You never agree. I appreciate that. Go ahead, Coach.
And I sit here in awe of the way you voice things.
Thank you, man. It took a while. You're absolutely right. You never agree
with you, but if I did, we'd both be wrong.
It took all this time. Thanks, Coach.
A lot of great coaching going on here. And so
we just heard that Ohio State has the best blockers at the 2nd level. That's history. Right, Joey? You were a great blocker.
You were. That's right.
There's no question.
I like these coaches. Bring these guys back.
Hey, I have more on-field experience than them.
Yeah, let's don't go there. But here's what I see. At Texas, we were called soft all the time, and we really weren't. But if you lose a game and somebody was more physical than you get soft for a lifetime. Oregon's tired of hearing they're soft. And they weren't soft against Stanford. They weren't soft against UCLA. They weren't soft against Florida State the other night. So I think that they understand if they get beat tomorrow night, it's going to go back to soft. That's 100%. I can promise that. Second thing is I think Urban Meyer plays defense with his offense because he's got a big, strong running quarterback. And he's hard to tackle. I think what you said, Joey, when I saw him run over Alabama, I said, uh-oh, And all those offensive players said, hey, man, I like this. Yeah. This is going to be fun. He's got a great running back in Elliott. He averaged 11-plus yards the last 2 games per touch against Wisconsin for a championship and against Alabama, who's supposedly the greatest defensive minds in the country. And then you've got Smith, and them losing a corner. He got Smith, who you can throw deep to, who's maybe the fastest player out there, and that keeps Marcus on the bench. So if I'm Oregon, that's my concern. I got to stop the tailback. I got to stop the quarterback, and I cannot let 12 gauge beat me deep to Smith.
We've answered a lot of questions, probably more questions than have been asked thus far, certainly from the coaches. We're going to find out when we come back who will lift that trophy high at that 50-yard line tomorrow, Oregon or Ohio State.
Hey, I like your ride. I just want to let you know, you can save a ton by switching to Progressive.
Go Buckeyes! Go Buckeyes!
Welcome to 2015. We celebrate a new year and a new era. The semifinals are complete. One of the largest stages on earth is set. The College Football Playoff National Championship, presented by AT&T. Monday, January 12th on ESPN.
And it comes from AT&T Stadium. Lines are all painted. The end zones are painted. Ohio State facing Oregon. Extremely fast team against a team that has battled back from a lot of controversy and been down all season long, but come back to win, the Ohio State Buckeyes. So it should be a fantastic game. Both great offenses and a proven defense in Ohio State. We expect a lot of Oregon's defense as well. But, Jesse, who needs to get off to a quick start to win this game?
I'm going to say it's Ohio State. They proved against Alabama in the semifinal, down 21-6, they could come back. When I just think about Oregon and their offense and how quickly they score, I think it puts a lot of pressure on you as a quarterback and as an offensive coordinator. Other teams and opponents, we've watched them play, they go into shell shock. And you start feeling like every time you get the ball back, you've got to score now because Marcus Mariota is about to dial up another drive and go. So we've seen coordinators in the past press with play calling, maybe take more chances and not be as patient as they normally would be. You see quarterbacks start taking unnecessary risks with the football. With a guy like Cardell Jones, only in his 3rd start, could be a major question mark. So to me, I think it's more important in this game, in a big game with a quarterback making only his 3rd start, Ohio State gets off to a quick start.
I think to build on that point, Jesse, I think for their defense, for the Ohio State defensive line, they are very good. And the first starters, the Adolphus Washington, Michael Bennett, Joey Bosa, they're good. Not a lot of depth behind them. So if you can steal a couple of drives early in the game, take 8, 9, 10 plays, take some time off the clock and score if you're Ohio State, and cheat and get some of those plays off the field for that defensive line, it's going to help them in the second half.
You know, I think it's Oregon because watching the Rose Bowl, everybody still thought it's Florida State that's undefeated with all these tremendous athletes against soft Oregon. And it's, you know, everybody's picking them, but I don't know that they can stand up to them. The pressure to me is on Oregon to prove that they can be as physical as Ohio State and play with these great athletes because Ohio State has great athletes. And their whole game plan is built on 100 plays, staying on the field, wearing out the other bunch. So if they get some stops early and Ohio State can stay on the field offensively, I think Oregon's got to play defense with their offense as well.
I disagree with both of you. I don't think it matters whether you get off to a good start or a bad start. I think you're going to play the game for 60 minutes, and that's it. Stay with your game plan. However, the last 5 minutes of the first half, first 5 minutes of the second half, that is when it's critical. That's when you have to win. Let's remember this. Ohio State scored right before the half, scored right after the half. Those 14 points go in Alabama's favor. All of a sudden, it's runaway. That's the only 5 minutes I worry about.
And Ohio State is a team that is coming off a very physical Sugar Bowl. Oregon rested in the 4th quarter, had an easier run at it. They're going to be a little fresher coming out, and Ohio State has to rebound from playing Alabama, playing in that kind of game to get back up. Ohio State has to come out and get off to doesn't have to be a blazing fast start. They don't have to go down and score the first 3 possessions of the game, but they have to get off to a start that sends the message to Oregon, we are here, we're ready to roll. Everyone assumes that Oregon's coming in flying. They're going to be full steam ahead right out the gate. That's what we expect from them. Ohio State's going to have to match.
Well, I agree with Coach on before the half and after the half. Florida State scores and misses a field goal with 3 seconds left to go in the half, or they have 10 unanswered points and get the ball to start the third quarter, and they're running right down the field when they fumble the ball. So that could have been a 17-point swing.
Every game you look at the last 5 minutes of the half, first 5 minutes, second half.
Who's going to win?
I'm saying Oregon. It's very rare in a game of this magnitude. There's such a discrepancy between 2 quarterbacks and their experience. And as good as Cardale Jones has looked in 2 games, I'm waiting for him to look like a guy making his 3rd start. I think this will finally be the first time against an opportunistic defense. Marcus Mariota is the Heisman Trophy winner for a reason. He's the edge. I'm going Ducks.
The question of Cardale Jones should be answered after last game. And we're talking Nick Saban, Alabama. That question's answered. I just don't see any weaknesses in this Ohio State team. I think they win it.
I think Ohio State wins. I picked them to beat Alabama. I'm sure going to pick them to beat Oregon.
I picked Oregon earlier in the week. A little bit nervous. I still go in Oregon, but I think it's going to be a tight game.
And I have Oregon, too, because of their defense getting enough stops.
Yeah, that's not a surprise.
I'm not paid to prognosticate. I am paid to get us to commercial and tell everyone, join the game on Monday night. It's going to be a great one.